gentlemen, how are you?
Start your engines.
Not too bad.
Yes.
Yeah.
The flag has been
Engines.
waved.
I am exhausted by the amount of deals.
There's no such thing as too many trades. How dare you? I think it's more exhaustion from. I don't know you guys. I watched the first round of the draft, and I don't bother watching the 2nd through 7th. In a normal year, it goes by very quickly. However, the past 2 COVID ones have been awful. If anyone actually watched rounds 2 through 7 yesterday, or not yesterday, was it yesterday?
Yes.
Yes, if you took the time to do that, I applaud you because it is that is a slugfest.
I have some funny tweets about this.
Okay.
By round 4 and 5, Michael Russo was tweeting out like he's begging Bill Guerin to trade up or trade out of those rounds completely because he's tired.
Yeah,
exactly. I did watch, well, not diligently, but I had rounds 2 to 7 on in the background as I wrote a school exam.
Mm-hmm.
You're a rebel.
It really didn't change. Like I was just as focused on the exam as I.
Well, you only had to focus on 3 picks.
Right, but I was just interested to see. Yeah, I was just interested to watch it if there was any trades. But the only time I ever listened was when Friedman was on.
Exactly.
It was like,
he felt bad, by the way, because there weren't a lot of those sort of in the draft trades. Besides, like everyone moving down in that or moving up. It was really funny when Montreal and Arizona made that trade of Arizona getting Montreal 7th for Arizona 7th next year, and you're like, oh wow, so this is. They made a graphic Arizona for it. What are you doing?
They just had so much time on their hands.
It's the intern.
They're kind of
like,
bored.
Yeah, it's probably okay. I'm picturing this. It's the intern saying like, "Oh, I finished all my stuff. Do you guys need help with anything else?" And then he's like, "Oh, perfect. How about you make this graphic for us?"
That's probably what happened. That's definitely what happened.
And that will be the next GM of the Arizona Coyotes, because I don't know how many staff they actually have there. Kind of like Ottawa. All right, we have an awful lot to talk about today. It's been very much besides a selection in the first round, which we're going to talk about in a very, very quickly here from the Canadiens and Logan Mailloux. Beside that, we actually had a very, very fun few days of trade. You guys know me. I love trade. I love trades so much. I beg for them. I cry for them. I love trades.
You were trigger happy in our Twitch, our short-lived Twitch series.
Yes, because you need it's the headlines, right? Not to mention for the YouTube channel. Those are the videos that get you the most amount. It's because people want to hear about the new guy you've gotten. And boy, did we have some legit blockbusters, and we will talk about them later. However, we should mention first, because there are 2 teams we talk about on this show mainly. Those are the Leafs and the Habs. The Leafs aren't very busy right now because they had 3 picks. The Habs, on the other hand, made headlines for all the wrong reasons in the first night of the draft, selecting Logan Mailloux. Out of technically, he's a London Knights defenseman. He was on loan to Sweden this season because the CHL did not have a season to speak of. I'm just going to read a little snippet here so people can have a bit of context for this young man. This is an Eric Engels article on Sportsnet. With the 31st overall pick, the Canadiens chose Mailloux, who had renounced himself from the process after he was charged in Sweden with invasion of privacy and defamation. Mailloux paid a fine of $1,650 for showing teammates with SK Lejeune in Sweden a Snapchat of him engaged in a consensual sexual activity with a woman who did not consent to having such images shared with anyone. I'm just going to quickly read Mailloux's statement, his actual statement regarding like when he took himself out the draft. And people may be wondering, technically under the CBA, a player cannot take themselves out the draft. But regardless, this statement was made, and here it is. Being drafted into the – and sorry, this is via Logan's Twitter account, his personal one. Being drafted into the NHL is an honor and a privilege that no one takes lightly. The NHL draft should be one of the most exciting landmark moments in the player's career. And given the circumstances, I don't feel I've demonstrated strong enough maturity or character to earn that privilege in 2021. If I were to ever have the honor of being selected, I want a fan base to be proud to welcome me to their organization. I know it will take time for society to build back the trust I have lost, And this is why I think it is best that I renounce myself from the 2021 draft. And ask that no one select me for this upcoming weekend. I feel that this would allow me to, the opportunity to demonstrate an adequate level of maturity and character next season with the London Knights in the OHL and provide all the NHL teams the opportunity to reassess my character towards the 2022 NHL draft. Regardless of this statement, the Montreal Canadiens decided to select Logan 31st overall in the draft. Immediately following the selection, they released a statement on social media. The moment that the first round had finished, Marc Bergevin spoke to the media. Trevor Timmins, after the second and seventh rounds, spoke to the media. The morning after the first round, Logan Mailloux talked to the media. And we'll get into all of that in a second here because this is a very important discussion to have. I guess, first off, what was your guys' reaction if you either saw it live or you saw the tweet or whatever, that the Habs had probably just made the most controversial draft pick in the history of the NHL draft?
So I wasn't watching the first round, but I have Elliot Friedman on notifications for every time he tweets. And I did a double read, because I didn't clue in on the name. I read it and I said, oh, okay, like, cool. He's been doing it all night. And then I read it again and I said, that's the guy who less than a week ago renounced himself from the draft. And I'm not entirely sure what. I was just in shock that they actually did it.
Mm-hmm. Dan.
I was really shocked too. I think that, we don't know we don't know all the details of what's been going on, but to have a statement like that, to know that there's been so much backlash with different incidents before, like we mentioned already, Mitchell Miller last year. And the one thing that really shocked me was like, that was already a controversial thing in the fourth round, that the Coyotes still took a chance, but to use your first round pick like that and like be okay with it. And then the whole thing, I think James Myrtle was the first one, was like, it's not a good thing if you have to put out a statement after you make a draft choice. Mm-hmm. And again, that still was kind of, for me, like, in a way, it was kind of like in your face type of thing. It's like with Marc Bergevin, just, yeah, we're using our first round pick for this guy. Like, we don't care what everything else says. And then it was kind of like the same sentiment what the Coyotes said about Mitchell Miller, where we're going to work with him to know that he could get through this. And like, he's working on his character, and, that's a big important thing for us in this organization.
Mm-hmm. Something that Bergevin said to defend the pick was his statement showed a level of regret and maturity. I can't believe that. It is like the feeling is like, and I've looked at some of, like, I tried reading articles on the rest of Montreal's draft picks, and you're just like, I don't care if this guy and this guy are good picks. It soiled the entirety of Montreal's draft. Now that is not actually important. The Habs don't matter in this. Logan Mailloux doesn't matter at this. No offense, but like, and this looks bad for the NHL and hockey culture, which we're going to talk about in a second here. What's really important here, and is if you're anyone who's sort of defending this young man, is you need perspective is super important, right? So what you need to do when you're sort of thinking about the story is you put yourself in the shoes of the victim. And the way I put it in the video I made on my YouTube channel was that, yeah, Daniel's like, oh no. All right, sorry, we're back. Technical difficulties. So anyway, what I was saying, you need to put yourself in the shoes of the victim here. The girl whose the images he showed off to his teammates, and you got to think, okay, how would she feel? And very important, there's been no report so far that the Habs reached out to the victim. And when Mailloux was speaking to the media, he never even referred to her as anything but the girl, which is awful. How does she feel seeing him getting drafted by a massive hockey market, a team that just went to the Cup final? Ultimately, this guy is set up like he has he will have a massive leg up on the average person now in the situation he's in. And listen, I'm all for second chances. You have to earn a second chance, though. It's more than just being, he was a teenager. I knew what was right and wrong at 18 years old. I mean, it's incredible to me that people are just making so much excuses. I don't get it. And he, honestly, guys, he didn't seem, now, obviously, like in something like this, and we've talked about it before, receipts. All he said in his media availability was, I've done therapy for the past couple of years. For all we know, that was court ordered. We don't know anything more. And when talked about, is there sort of a roadmap, Eric Engels asked, like about what you're going to do in the future here. He didn't have an answer. And apparently the Canadiens, since he released his statement about not wanting to be drafted, did not contact him. So they don't have a plan, clearly. So, and the worst part is they went with their guy. And that's actually, I think, the worst thing is apparently other teams were thinking of drafting him too.
Yeah, in the second round.
This league, man. This league.
Just to go back to what you said there about the second chances thing, because we did have this discussion. Oh man, I'm forgetting his name. The fourth round pick, Arizona.
Mitchell Miller.
Sorry, thank you. We had that same discussion there, and I think a lot of what we said in that discussion is easily applicable here as well. Like receipts, why? This idea, and I never understand it. This idea that it's a privilege. Like it is a privilege to play in the NHL. Like we've said this before, it is a privilege to be able to play in the NHL. It's not something that anyone is just handed. If that was the case, there would be everyone would do it. Everyone would do it. It's like, and especially for me, and listen, I get it. I'm a Leafs fan, but man, like I'm not anti-Habs by any means. Like just to see an organization like that who has such high standards, and I mean, you could verify that for me as well, Adam, but to have such high standards in the culture that they seem to have, and then to do this, it doesn't make sense to me. Like it's not your job to do, it's not your job to change him. Like that should be his.
See, it's funny you kind of mention that, because there are two sort of schools of thought you have there. In my eyes, and it's very important people listening to the two sides here. It obviously this is not what the Montreal Canadiens should stand for. This is not the kind of stuff that a Carey Price represents. You think of Habs greats. That's not what Jean Beliveau was about. But what's concerning is that if you look at some players in the past that Marc Bergevin has been interested in, a.k.a. I'm not even mentioning Tony DeAngelo, Saba Voinov is a big one. It's ignoring the morals of it and just being like, I want that player. And it's sickening. The Habs honestly should be ashamed of themselves. And I don't mean to sort of shift off of them by saying that multiple teams were interested. They were the ones who pulled the trigger on it. They saw that a big need for the Canadiens going into that draft was they needed, with losing Weber and Cale Fleury in the same week, they had a massive hole in the right side of their defense in the pipeline. And we already saw that during the regular season because Romanov or Kulak were playing the offhandedness. They saw clearly it wasn't about wanting to rebuild the character. They saw a need that needed to be filled in the organization, and they saw a player who fit that mold. And they ignored everything else, like 6'3", over 200 pounds. Nastiness in this game is the scouting report on this kid. That is exactly what Bergevin wants. Didn't care a single bit, the Canadiens. And if you want any further proof, watch that clip that's going around when Marc-Andre Godin asked Trevor Timmins, I'm paraphrasing here, Logan Mailloux said he had not earned the right to be drafted. Why did Montreal feel the opposite? And there was about 30 seconds of silence. They weren't prepared. They didn't have an answer.
How do you respond to that? There's no right answer. There's no right answer to that question.
It's such a simple question, though.
Yeah.
It goes beyond belief. It's like, I saw a joke. Sorry to interrupt you. Like, the joke was like, when a reporter asks you a question that wasn't in the PR guide or something.
Like, I don't know, and it could have just been me, but when I read Montreal's statement, first off, and everyone tweeted it. If you have to tweet out a statement after you make a pick, for the most part, that's never a good thing, ever. And that statement that they tweeted out read to me the exact same way the Coyote statement read to me last year. And I've made my comments more than clear on what I thought about that statement.
Again, like, and I'm not dissuading anything where we look at what is the bigger issue here of a guy that clearly knows what he did was wrong. And again, he asked people, don't draft me. I know that, we don't know if that was a PR move or anything, and I think the other thing you've talked about is like other teams being interested in the second round. Like, that's another thing, like what you said, Montreal made that pick, but I'm just looking at this where, like, was it really worth that risk? Like, you were picking 31st in a draft where it was a dartboard. You know what I mean? Like, you could have, like, it's not like we're mentioning, like, here are the top 5 guys, and we just had to get him. It's at the end of the first round where there was clearly other guys who dropped in the draft. There were guys that still showed that type of skill set that they wanted on the right side, and yet they still made that pick.
Yeah, like Aatu Ratti was available. Logan Mailloux was not even the consensus best player available. Now, if you look at draft list, he was projected around there, but that doesn't matter. Now, apparently some other rationale that was discussed was because of where Montreal then drafted in the second round, they didn't believe that he would be available. And it's like, and if you're listening to this, you're probably thinking, what does that mean? It doesn't matter. It doesn't. Yeah. I agree. Like, that was their thinking. It was. Think of the human side of this guy. It's so simple. Like, what are you doing?
And listen, it's not your fault. It's their rationale. It just doesn't make any amount of sense to me. So clearly it doesn't matter whether he was drafted in the first round. He could have been the first overall pick. He could have been the last pick in the draft. What he did is still a thing. It doesn't even, like, Mitchell Miller was a 4th round pick last year, and we still had this long discussion about it. It's regardless of where he is picked. It's this discussion that we're having. And I think I was ready, like, before the Canadiens picked him, I was ready to come on this show and blast the league as just business-wise, they don't make sense. I'm starting to realize just this league as a whole it's just catastrophically horrible. I don't know what we're doing here, because my understanding was, I believe it was about 5 or 6 teams who had him on a do not draft list. That's there's 32 teams in the NHL.
It's baffling. The cherry on top, this is the last thing I'll say here, is the language of the first round is very particular in the fact of a normal year, they go up to the podium, a team will say normally, congratulations to the Stanley Cup champions, maybe the runners-up. Shout out to Bettman finally saying something about the Habs, by the way. At this point, I kind of wish he took it back, by the way. And by the way, the look on Bettman's face after the pick was made was like, it spoke volumes. So anyway, you have that kind of stuff, right? Like, they welcome the home city, they say hi to their fans. Naturally, they didn't do that because of how slow the pace of it was. And by the way, in a second, we're going to talk about the broadcast itself, because many issues with the draft this year. But what was shocking to me was it gets to Montreal, and this is the dagger. We are proud to select. Is the nail in the coffin. Now, normally you would say they always do that with a pick. Yes, but the context is so important around Logan Mailloux. it's still I'm to a level speechless. And just should be ashamed of themselves. Every member of that organization that went along with that pick, ownership if they knew, because I doubt the fact that Jeff Molson wouldn't know.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's more than just Mark Bergevin and Trevor Timmins, especially with the story, just purely from a business sense. With a story when it comes out like that, and you are now going to say, he said he doesn't want to be drafted, but we're going to draft him anyways. There's no way that Jeff Molson doesn't know. There's multiple people who have to know about this. This isn't Mark Bergevin going rogue. Like I saw people saying it looked like Trevor Timmins doesn't know. I find it, or didn't know. I just find that hard to believe that members of management and ownership would not know about a decision like this prior to it being made, especially considering the context behind it.
I remember Brian Burke, and I'm just going to talk about like how a pick is selected and how they value a first round pick. I remember Brian Burke when he was outlining, I guess, his own process of how he was managing picks. Like he mentioned that, he loved Bobby Ryan or he loved Morgan Riley as those picks. But again, like, yeah, I'm the GM, but it doesn't mean I could just, go on my own and pick these guys. Like it's like he's being held accountable by everyone else in that organization to make a decision for that one player. So I completely agree that as much as we blame Mark Bergevin, we know like how the process is. It was a collective failure, I think, by that management team.
By the way, the way I it's always been around the Canadiens draft is always Timmins is the guy in charge, and whoever him and his team say they should take on the list, it's them. It was even going back to like that leaked footage of when Caulfield was drafted. Or no, sorry, they put that out. But remember their draft list got leaked.
Oh.
God, like Timmins gets the call. Now a GM would have the final say, but that's just another body in the way of saying yes or no. And again, what makes it being in the first round even worse than in the fourth or the fifth or whatever is, again, the broadcast of it. And again, going back to the victim, seeing that broadcast, because she'll see the clip, just makes like she'll remember everything all over again. And it's that at the end of the day is the worst part. And I feel horrible for her. We should move on though. Again, it is always going like this is always a hard turn to make. Though we have a lot to talk about today. I think that's the last we're going to mention on the Canadiens at all. And whatever. Okay. From here, guys, the draft itself, again, with COVID, it's done remotely. There were some viewing parties kind of across different cities and that. Seems like they had like a big setup in Columbus because obviously they had a great day. By the way, can we all agree that Columbus were like Columbus and Buffalo, but I'd say more so Columbus won the draft?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a wicked few.
Especially who drops to them. Yeah.
Remind me who they picked again.
How do you say his name again?
Cole Sillinger.
Cole Sillinger and let me just go back.
Kent Johnson.
Kent Johnson. That was like he doesn't have the super skill, but like that's like the head first type of guy into every play. But not even just that. Like the second they got for Jake Bean, trading the second for Jake Bean was great.
There's one more guy.
Yes. Okay. Who else?
Corson Coolmans.
Is the guy is that the guy named after Shane Corson?
I don't know about that.
Okay, it might
I would
be,
believe it.
No,
but don't be confused by Carson Kuhlman, the defenseman in Boston.
Mm-hmm. So, guys, I need you to explain something to me. Why in the draft are we still doing this? Because between picks, obviously, you get the 5-minute sort of window to make your pick or trade it. Why in the world are teams using the full 5 minutes? And why, if you are trading a pick, does the team who is moving up, who clearly knows their guy taking another 5 minutes to make the pick, just completely slow down the draft?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's weird to me. Like, what I kind of felt with that is that, like, you're not doing any last minute work. It's like, right? Like, you already know your list going in and just make the pick. That happens in the NBA. It's like the pick is in, even though they have like sometimes the 3 or 4 minutes. But Once it's done, right? You go to the podium, or for in this case, you just mention it.
I don't like it. They slowed it down. Like I think at one point, like Bill Guerin, when they made the Wallstat pick, he hurried up. He was doing a good job. By the way, looking at some of the picks in depth here, obviously Owen Power goes number 1 to Buffalo. He wasn't prepared on the broadcast to tell exactly where he was going next year. He's probably going back to Michigan. Yeah. Seattle, their first pick is Matty Beniers. That was pretty cool. Further proof to how enclosed hockey is. Lot of sons or cousins of NHL players. Luke Hughes going to New Jersey with his brother is pretty cool. Taylor McCarr getting picked in the 200s, going to Colorado to be with his brother. Colton Dock goes to Chicago. Josh Doan, I believe that's Shane's son, goes to Arizona. Though the big one I want to ask you guys about. The Coyotes need a goalie, right?
The Coyotes need a goalie?
Not the Coyotes. Edmonton need a goalie, right?
I mean, I've made myself quite clear on Mike Smith, but yeah.
So why in the world did they trade the pick to Minnesota to let the Wild pick Jesper Wallstat? What were they thinking?
Apparently the mentality is, and I'm not saying this is correct, but Ken Holland's mentality, according to Chris Johnson, is that they're in a win now mode. Like they're still going to wait like 3 or 5 years for Jesper Wallstad.
But it's that's baloney. They traded for the 22nd and then the 90th overall pick. I believe what you're saying, Daniel. I just think that mentality makes no sense to me. Yeah, you're gonna get Jesper Wallstad in 5 or 6 years, let's say. How about like who cares and just take him?
Another thing I found there, and this is my own analysis, just based on like looking at the picks. After that first round, Edmonton doesn't select for a while, right? Remember, because the Andreas Athanasiou trade and all those other random trades they've done, that if they didn't get the 3rd round pick, then they were not going to be selecting for like quite some time in the draft.
Yeah, they went from the 22nd overall pick, which they selected Xavier. Oh man, I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Bourgault, I think.
Bourgault, and then they didn't pick until the 90th, where they selected Luca Munzenberger. But like, why would you just take Jesper Wallstat? Like, what was the idea here in saying, yeah, we're going to take a guy in the 3rd round?
You don't have anyone in the pipeline. That's the problem. Like, no offense, but Stuart Skinner? Is that it? Who else? I mean, we'll see who they sign in free agency, but I just didn't get it for Edmonton. By the way, looking at Minnesota, like also getting, I think they had Carson Lambos as well. Mm-hmm. They had also a very good draft. It was really funny because also great gesture. Sorry, this is not what's funny. A really great gesture to have Tom Kerrs' family there making the picks.
Yeah.
Now, what I meant to see that was funny was you saw the nameplates of the draft table and I saw Judd Brack and I'm like, oh yeah. Oh, Vancouver. I'm so sorry.
And from what I've read, and Daniel, you might be able to talk more about it, but it seemed like Minnesota just overall had a really good draft.
Yeah, like Jesper Wallstad, he's a guy that apparently Judd Brackett is the one who's like, we have to get this guy because he dropped. Remember, he was supposed to be the first goalie selected,
right,
before Sebastian Cossa.
Yeah,
and then Carson Lambos is, I think I forgot who on Sportsnet wrote an article about it, but they compare his game to like what I find is very Minnesota in a way. Like that 200-foot game, and his most comparable is Jake Muzzin.
Okay.
Where, like, apparently he's more disciplined in his early years than Jake Muzzin, but like he has that kind of like, you know, he's not going to be your number one guy, but he's someone that you absolutely need if you want to win.
There could be a lot worse comparisons than Jake Muzzin. Is what I'll say.
Pretty good defenseman from what I hear.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I really like his name.
Muzzin?
Carson
Lambos.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that is a good name. Everyone thought Winnipeg was going to take him, and I was kind of confused when they didn't. Very weird for Winnipeg.
I'm shocked that everyone was shocked. The Tyler Boucher pick, 10th overall.
And then his dad was like, yeah, he's going to be like Josh Anderson. Everyone's like, wait, what?
Because this guy was supposed to go like middle of the 2nd round.
Isn't this Brian Boucher's son? Is what I understood, of course. Yeah. Sounds right. That's, come on. Come on.
Apparently, he had a rough year though. Like there were injuries. Like he did well for himself. Like you think about it, the Sens have gone off the board before. I'm pretty sure the Lacey Thompson.
Yeah, and then Jake Sanderson.
Yeah, they went, but like Sanderson was going to go high, but like the Lassie Thompson was like a bit of the off the board stuff. Like, not to mention, like Gunter fell. Like it's a wild draft. You know what I mean?
Eklund fell. I thought from what I read the last 2 weeks, to me it seemed like Eklund was going to be a top 3 pick.
Yep.
And he fell to 7th, and at San Jose, I think got a really good player. But we'll see. Like there were some weird ones. Like it seemed like after Owen Power, it was just a crapshoot.
You know what I laughed at is before the draft, Mason McTavish.
Yeah. They're
like, who's your most comparable in the NHL right now? And he said Ryan Getzlaf. He got selected.
What are the chances?
You love it. Now it gets a little messy talking about trades because it's like, okay, they got a first. Okay, the first already happened. So it's because we're gonna talk about some big trades that come out. Actually, no, sorry. Before we do, I should say, so the Leafs had a brief draft. How did they do, Alex?
I mean, from what I've read, people are happy. They made 3 selections.
They drafted the next Datsuk, right?
Is that what someone said?
I don't know. I just
in the sixth. Was it a goalie in the 6th round?
So they took
what the draft is like, right?
They took Vyacheslav Peksa. He plays for Irbis Kazan, which is actually which is actually the same team that they took Artur Akhtyumov in the 4th round last year, I believe.
2 greyhounds of overseas, from what I hear.
So they're going to be playing together, while also competing with each other.
So you know what I find so funny, and I texted Adam about this yesterday, and I don't know if we're going to get to it today or on a different show. But the talk around Dubas lately is so weird to me. Like he picked a guy 6'2", 210. He picked this guy in the 2nd round, and people are still complaining. Like, what is he? What do you want? What do you want from the man?
You know, it's funny. The goalie the Ducks picked, I forgot his name, but he's 6'7".
Oh my god, he's huge,
man.
Huge.
I love the draft and hate it because it's like I love the player movement, but then like it's like somebody raves about a 4th round pick, and it's like reading some drafts is like, wow, they got 2 guys who could probably make the NHL, and you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. It's like what is it like? You hope that like if it's north of 3 picks you've had that make the NHL, it's an amazing draft. Yeah. And it's like, oh, like the comparables. It's like I see some Dougie Hamilton, and then a fan is like, oh, we got Dougie in the 5th round. Like that's not how it works.
I have a funny thing to state.
Let's hear it.
So the 6'7" goalie is Gage Alexander that the Ducks picked in the 5th round, and that 5th round pick is Edmonton's original pick that they got for trading Erica Branson to Ottawa, and then Ottawa previously acquired this pick for Tyler Ennis.
Oh,
wow! Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
that's the best. It's like the trade trees that are going to come out of the draft all the time.
So that's 2 goalies Edmonton has missed on.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, cool.
I love it. Devin Dubnyk. Can we stretch it out and say Devin Dubnyk too? Sure.
We can stretch it out as long as you want for Edmonton.
Cam Talbot. Okay. Why not?
But let's do it.
I love it. Kind of like how I love the trades and all that. So we can do a deep dive on Dubas once free agency's up and doing. You know, we have everyone saying, "Oh, the Leafs are going to be bad." It's like, guys, we still have one of the biggest periods of player like movement, which is hilarious, isn't it? With how much this is an off season of my dreams. With this is what we were promised last year. But the expansion draft pushed everything, and we still have free agency to go.
That might be the title of the episode.
What?
Off-season of my dreams.
I'm okay with that. It's just me with heart in my eyes. Like
it is now.
I love it. So
write it down.
We have some trades to talk about here.
Many.
No.
It's amazing that a 1-for-1, including Jake Atkinson, with Cam Atkinson and Jake Voracek is somehow. As for 1-for-1 is an thought of the trade. So Columbus, we're going to focus on the 3 trades they made first. Then we're going to go to Buffalo, and then we're going to talk about the OEL deal. After that, some stuff like Buchnevich. We're going to talk about the Makar extension, the Hall extension, and I think that's going to be everything for today, but there's a lot in there. So first off, the Columbus Blue Jackets have reacquired Jake Voracek, which is hilarious. He has 3 years left on his deal, by the way. It's $8.25 million. And going to Philly, who actually, remind me, we need to have a talk about Philly in a second here.
Okay.
They send Cam Atkinson the other way. A little feisty little guy, great goal scorer, but he has 4 years left, $5.875 million. What I am confused about with this trade is that Columbus have such a problem with getting guys to stay. And Cam Atkinson's like the poster boy for I stayed, I love it here. And then we're getting Jake Voracek back, who described his relationship with the fan base as love and hate. He's like, I love it.
I didn't get it. Okay, I just have, before we actually talk about actual analysis, I have a joke about the Jake Voracek going to Columbus. Like, I know this always happens when a player goes back to a team, but like on Twitter, there are people showing pictures of Voracek from like 2008, 2009. It's like, oh, how first picture of Voracek in a Columbus jersey. How's my Photoshop skills?
Jersey swap.
For me, I didn't really understand it from Columbus's sense, just because what are you getting back 3 years of Jake Voracek? Like, it just feels like it's I've seen some guys on Columbus Twitter just basically saying that this is just a total reset. And it's similar to what, which team was it? I don't remember the team, but you're essentially clearing house and Minnesota, where they're like, yeah, okay. So we're just letting guys go who were a part of the last regime, if that's what we're going to call it, and starting this new one. But to me, it's like, well, you couldn't have gotten anything other than Jacob Voracek for Cam Atkinson. That's all you could get. That, to me, in my eyes.
You know what I do wonder is I really think Voracek's going to bounce back because he doesn't have to deal with the Flyers media anymore.
Sure.
Remember that reporter he went after when he's like, you just write this crap. And it's I just love Voracek's personality. And we there were reports that they needed to change the scenery. Like it's a bold move.
It is.
Yeah.
And like looking at it, Jarmo Kekalainen might be one of my favorite general managers in the league now because he's just he knows what he wants to do and he does it. It's weird. Like, it's kind of the opposite of the Vancouver trade in a way that there's the sort of, and like, listen, I think you still have 2 very good top 6 level forwards in my opinion, but there's the more money, but there is sort of shorter term as opposed to the Vancouver of OEL where it's just like, oh my God, we're going to sit here with massive term and we're probably going to be screwed a few years because we're Vancouver and we already were, but now it's even worse. Woo!
It's like Jim Rutherford, where he's like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it, whether anyone likes it or not. And he'd make the trade. And that's what Jarmo's doing here, I think.
What I'm feeling with this is what kind of Columbus Blue Jackets team is he going to be looking for now with this type of money on the roster? Because he's still paying Gustav Nyquist and he still has to pay or, do something with Patrick Laine. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, is it going to be a full-scale rebuild? Because I know that Atkinson didn't really have one of the easier contracts to move, but I assume that he would have gotten younger assets for that than doing a 1-for-1.
Can we talk about that Patrick Laine and Jake Voracek are on the same team? Put them together for every media availability ever, please.
Let's do it.
I want that zest. So I like, again, if you're not following Aaron Portzline, follow Aaron Portzline.
Yeah.
He's just going to have all the scoops here.
Another thing, because Daniel brought up rebuild.
Yeah.
I was reading, I believe it was either 31 Thoughts or it was Aaron Portzline who reported it, that they've been taking calls on Zach Werenski. So if to answer your rhetorical question, I believe it is they are going for a full-scale rebuild. And I trust Jarmo Kekalainen in doing it. Like, just looking, and we'll get to the Seth Jones deal, but man.
And you know what? We'll do it right now.
Okay.
We'll do it right now. I mean, because beside that, they got Jake Bean for a second rounder. I think the second may have been from Chicago, actually.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
And I think we can agree that Jake Bean, good defenseman to have. Carolina, kind of weird that they got rid of him. Anyway,
He didn't have time. Like, they didn't give him an opportunity.
no, they didn't. Kind of like Hayden Fleury. How are you? But anyway, so looking at Columbus, they make the move, the move of the weekend, I would say, right?
Yep.
So Chicago has been rumored and linked to Columbus and this Seth Jones trade for a couple of weeks now. And there was sort of that word of, it wouldn't hurt if we got his brother from the Oilers, which they did. And we complimenting that trade. And it's very difficult to compliment the Blackhawks right now, which is probably good because we're not going to compliment them for this deal.
No.
Because it was bad.
Yeah.
So, but for Columbus, it's amazing. So Columbus. Oh, sorry, no, that is the Jake Bean stuff. No, I mean to reset. So the Blue Jackets in Chicago, from this trade, first off, they swapped their picks in the first round of the draft. Columbus to 11, Chicago to 32. Also remind me, please, guys, I want to talk about Bowman's pick and how he did it. The Blue Jackets also get the second rounder, which turned into Jake Bean, a 2022 first rounder, which is apparently lottery protected. Most are nowadays.
Oh, it's top two protected.
Oh, Todd, because but the lottery is only the first two picks now, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, remember they changed it, Daniel.
Sorry, I got confused. NBA rules.
It's okay. It's okay. That's a superior league, Daniel. I don't blame you. And the big piece, the prospect, is Adam Bogfist, a defenseman who we looked at a lot. Was like, man, you're going to be building around him for the future, aren't you? Instead, no. And by the way, Chicago get a 2022 sixth rounder and Seth Jones. Now, on Wednesday, the Blackhawks are expected to sign Seth Jones to an 8-year contract extension, which doesn't kick in until next season because he's a year left on his deal. $76 million. This will carry an AAV of $9.5 million, which will make him the third highest paid defenseman in the National Hockey League. And yes, that is above Cale Makar and Miro Heiskanen. The two above him, Drew Doughty, terrible contract for a declining defenseman. Erik Karlsson, horrible contract for a declining defenseman. And here we are, Seth Jones, a terrible deal for a declining defenseman. So, gentlemen, how do we feel about Seth Jones getting this contract? Because I think we can all agree he's a good defenseman.
Yeah.
But
the contract or the deal? Like,
I think first talk about the return Columbus got, and then we can rip apart that albatross of a deal.
I think the return Columbus got is phenomenal. Like I get they moved down, like they moved to the Chicago moved down essentially. Like if I can do the math right there, but you got 2 first round picks and Adam Bachfist.
Great name.
And then essentially Jake Bean for Seth Jones, a first and a sixth. Like, I think that's a great deal. I wasn't expecting that. They were talking about Alex DeBrincat and I think it was Kirby Doc. I didn't realize that because they were having conversations of this magnitude. Like, to me, trading Adam Bachfist, in my opinion, was the wrong move. Mm-hmm. Not that I also would have traded DeBrincat or Doc, but if that's where the conversation is starting, I'm like, sorry, I just don't really want Seth Jones then. Like, that's a high price to pay. The Columbus look like geniuses leaving this deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I really laughed at, or had a good chuckle with Mark Lazarus and his article on this trade, where it's like he was writing down what everyone was thinking. And it was funny because it just sounded like he was just thinking about it. Like, he was just talking to himself in a way. Like, he's like, really, Adam Bachfist and the other picks? Like, why can't it be one or the other? And then it's just the idea of, like, what are you getting out of this Seth Jones? Is like, I know that it was a drastic drop off this past season, that this is not the same Seth Jones from like 2 years ago. But again, the one question, like, and he put it up like really well, was what are you adding Seth Jones to? Like, what is this Blackhawks team like you're adding to? Like, this is not Jonathan Taves of 3 years ago, or we don't know how he's going to play after a year off. You know, Patrick Kane's still going to be Patrick Kane, but you don't have that depth anymore. You're not adding like a Seth Jones who there's so many question marks to it, to a team that, you know, you in a way depleted your assets. You really did deplete your assets. And this comes at a time where I complimented Chicago going into the bubble and going into the season, that they were getting the most out of all those young guys that they had out there. And now that they're going to try to do something that I don't understand what they want to do.
To me, this deal screams very similarly to when the Rangers went out and signed Artemi Panarin in free agency. Because in my opinion, at the time, I didn't necessarily think the Rangers were ready to add on a player of Artemi Panarin's caliber. I just think you're putting a guy who's going to make $9.5 million and is a very good defenseman into a rebuilding team. And you're giving up major, major assets to do it.
Mm-hmm. What the big difference there, by the way? Well, two things. First off, Panarin's worth $11 million.
Right. Correct.
And they got him for nothing.
100%. Just the idea, I mean, of adding a superstar to a rebuilding team.
It's to accelerate everything. It's
Correct.
just what Chicago have just done here is you may have taken a step forward, but you've taken 2 steps back. Correct. Getting rid of Boffiz, and no offense to Seth Jones, but even I think when he was at his best, I don't think he's going to be able to work a power play the way Adam Boffiz can. Yeah. And what's important that Chicago need to realize here is you may add this player, and listen, I love watching Patrick Kane play. Maybe the best American-born player. By the time the rest of those younger players in Chicago start hitting their peak, Kane might be done. Forget about Taves, as you mentioned, Daniel. Patrick Kane might be done there. And if it's set, like, and again, who's behind Seth Jones in that defense now? Dahan?
Nikolai Baudin.
Yeah, another young guy.
Ian Mitchell.
Another young guy. Like, the timelines aren't going to match up here. And not to mention, I mean, again, 9.5? No. I get you have cap space and Seabrook and Shaw, but the problem there is for those contracts and that LTIR to work, you need to be against the cap.
Right.
And you don't want to be filling it with Seth Jones because all of a sudden, I don't think Alex DeBrincat's that far away from being in. What's his deal like? What is that?
So he has 2 more years left. And then he's a restricted free agent with our rights, but he actually comes up at the same time as Kane, Taves, and Brett Connolly, which is about $24 million in cap space, if I can do math correctly.
At the end of your 2 cornerstone players, which are going to be impossible to replace.
Yeah.
You will only be technically by then you will still have 7 more years of Seth Jones.
Yeah.
I don't.
6.
It's 6?
No, 7. You're right. I can't do math.
To answer your, sorry, Adam.
No, go ahead.
To answer your question, so after this year, Calvin DeHaan and Connor Murphy, who are technically the defensemen after Seth Jones, are UFAs, and that leaves you with Riley Stillman, Ian Mitchell, Wyatt Kalenic, Caleb Jones, and then Nikita Zadorov has arbitration rights as an RFA right now.
Reminder that they lost the Saad trade twice.
Yeah.
I don't get it, man. You're not in a position to be trading this draft capital. I don't like it. Especially in a central division where I just don't think you're going to be a threat.
If you were Stan Bowman and you wanted to add an elite defenseman or a star defenseman, would it have not made more sense to say, let's overpay Dougie Hamilton than instead of, in my opinion, overpaying Seth Jones?
Yep.
Yeah.
You know now Dougie's not getting the same deal because this league doesn't value him the same way.
Yeah.
But I don't understand why. Like,
it's
no one does.
The most important question in hockey, my friend. Most important question in hockey.
I mean, we'll get to it later, but there's one particular defenseman trade that continues to boggle my mind more than this contract.
Hey, and both sides of the story. A good thing for Chicago, they're going to be better. But what's the margin?
Sure.
It's not
It's like
great.
it's like Stan Bowman. Okay, like this is what I kind of feel. The two things. These are like my final thoughts on this. One is like he cannot let go of Kane and Taves. Like he has that mentality that we've talked about before. Malkin and Crosby. Like even though you have the two of them, you have to always go for it. And the way everything is structured this year is like we got to go for it because we may potentially lose half our defensive core to free agency.
And ownership is probably say, yeah, you're not trading Tanner Caves either because they make too much money. Hey, sorry, they make us too much money. So no.
Daniel, don't you also say like the difference between having the team that Sidney and that Crosby and Malkin are surrounded by versus the current team that the Kane and Taves are surrounded by? I think I would pick the Penguins 10 times out of 10.
Yeah.
I mean, it helps when Letang's just kind of casually been there and like, oh, great, here's Gensel out of nowhere. Who was the last, like, oh my God, they just happened to have this guy that Chicago had? Again, they traded all of them, like Teravainen and that.
Yeah.
I
mean, Pius Sutter, we'll see how that goes. Or I'm going to say his name wrong. Like he did well this year too. Philip Khrushchev. Yeah, because like Kirby Dach, he only played 18 games this year.
Right.
Yep.
And like they were okay until they had like that end of the year meltdown.
And imagine that in an 82 game season.
Yeah.
Well, they were riding on a hot Kevin Lankinen.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. That help having a good goalie. I think all three of us would be in extreme agreement of is extremely important.
He also only has one more year.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, the way young goaltenders are being thingy right now, like he's not going to have great comparables. Nedeljkovic, all right, 3 years. Sucks his team hates him. All right, looking at some of the stuff Buffalo did, actually. I thought Kevin Adams hit it out the park this weekend. I know people aren't excited about the Reinhart return, but when you look at what they got for Ristolainen, I'd say it evens itself out. It's funny what Buffalo, Taylor Hall could have gotten more, but they got him for free. Or $8 million, but no assets, right? Home run with Ristolainen. Maybe you want a little more in the Reinhart deal. Maybe this means that next up it's a bouncing ball. They're going to nail it with Jack Eichel whenever that happens. Didn't get dealt at the draft. That's kind of weird. Apparently the Rangers aren't anywhere near that, so I can't wait to see where Eichel ends up. Anyway, though, First off,
Minnesota.
I maybe they're interested. I mean,
they have the assets.
Sorry?
They have the assets.
Oh, they do.
Things like they just have to. What is every trade scenario I've seen with it? Even Michael Russo's mentioned it. Like Victor Rask has to go back in that deal
because of money, right?
Yeah, he's getting like $4 million.
Yeah. Do it. Nice veteran leadership because the Sabres need something.
Okay, which deal you want to talk about first?
So many.
Reinhart, Sam Reinhart, who has really rebuilt himself this year, goes to Florida for a 2021 first, which I believe is also lottery protected. And goalie prospect, some would say a world junior legend, silver medalist this year to the Kings of the South, I will say. Devin Levi goes the other way. Now, I am not convinced on what ceiling Devin Levi has, though apparently what was really big for Kevin Adams on this whole thing was getting the first round pick. That's from Elliot Friedman in the new episode of 31 Thoughts. People should listen to that after they've listened to us, obviously, because we're better.
Even though we just talk about 31 Thoughts the entire time.
I think we've been good on that today, though.
No, we've been good.
With me, basically all my notes have been from The Athletic.
No, we've been good on it today. Last episode was so...
But Buffalo are trying to get rid of the people who don't want to be there because of how Buffalo have handled things. Not Kevin Adams' fault, by the way. But I still a respectable return for Reinhart, I'd say. I can give him a pass here.
I think he probably could have gotten more but I do think the deal that he got, if you're high on Devin Levi, probably wasn't like he probably wasn't gonna get much of a chance in Florida because Bobrovsky's tied up forever.
He must
Spencer
hate
Knight.
Spencer Knight this year, eh?
Yeah. Spencer Knight and then obviously Devin Levi is that last guy, and you know they already got a young guy in Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, but to have a second young guy seems like it's good. And also Buffalo have no goaltenders, which seems to be an issue. But I think the first round pick, it's top 10 protected, but either way, you're getting a decent pick out of it. I think it's just hindsight because Reinhart was a second overall pick.
Yeah.
That's where that comes from.
Again, yeah, like, you know, you get a first out of this, which was great because he was definitely not re-signing with them after this 1 year. And again, like, we don't know what a Devin Levi is going to look like for the Sabres, but I think the big thing I liked about it was the timeline, because they're going to go through another huge rebuild, but he is playing at Northeastern University right now. So there's, you know, as a 7th round pick, I expect he's going to play the full 4 years before he comes in as like a 22, 23-year-old, and then he's going to have the AHL time. So if there's something there that he could become an NHLer, then I think that was perfect for Buffalo to kind of pick him.
Learn from the Carolina Hurricanes, Kevin. Be patient with your goaltenders, please.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you overpay for them, and you have to buy them out like Scott Darling again.
Yeah, talk
Learn
to
from
Ron
Carolina.
Hextall. Ron Hextall.
Yeah, this is true. Also, be patient.
But,
Yes.
From Florida's perspective, though, and I feel like we've had this discussion that we have this feeling they're going to take a step back.
Yeah.
Like bringing back Anthony Duclair, now bringing in Sam Reinhart, who obviously they still have to sign, but you also still have Sam Bennett, who you're going to have to re-sign as well. Like they can make move, and getting rid of Keith Yandel, or not getting rid of that. Like he was clearly liked, but opening up that space could be pretty decent. They have $11 million in cap space. I can't see them being huge players in the big names for free agency, but I can see them making those same type of depth moves they made last year with a guy like Duclair at the time, like Wenberg and the others that they signed.
Well, they apparently are in on Suter. Now, everyone probably has some link to the Islander, but if not, if they can get him on board. And what I really like about this deal is they got Reinhart and they didn't have to give up Owen Tippett or Antoine Lundell, which is super sick. And right now, Daily Faceoff has Reinhart slotted in for that top line with Verhaeghe and Barkov. And then you got Duclair, Bennett, Huberdeau. Oh,
Great.
I'm excited for Florida. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, are they going to finish top 3?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I honestly think so.
I must say, though, like with this deal, especially with Reinhart being 25, the other angle I look at it is you don't really give up much for it. And you didn't kind of bet on like your guys who had the breakout years, who what Will Christophel said they played above their pay grade. Did like you actually you got someone to like who's established, who's going to give you that solid secondary scoring. Because when like I've mentioned this like a way back, like you have to give Alexander Barkov and Jonathan Huberdeau the support that they need if you want them to again sign long term with you.
Boy, did they!
Just on those two contracts, Barkov is up at the end of next year. Huberdeau in 2 years.
So this is an important year.
Yep.
They've got this is the statement year to those young guys. Well, not young guys, but you know what I mean. Those very important players.
Exactly.
And then listen, whatever they want, just give it to them. Honestly, if they gave Barkov like 8 years and they just gave him max term, like max money, I'd be okay with it.
Yep.
Might be the next most complete player in the league. Honestly, might be. So like, give him what he wants. Honestly, I don't care if it's flat cap. Just give it to him.
Just give it to him.
He's nasty. Just do it, man. Or they do the Kane and Taves things, and him and Barkov just get like this, or him and Huberdeau just get like the same deal. I'd be okay with that. I'd be really okay with that. Kind of like how I'm very okay with some of the other business Buffalo are doing here. They trade Rasmus Ristolainen into the Philadelphia Flyers. The Flyers, who are just so nuts right now. In exchange, Buffalo get defenseman Robert Haig, the 14th overall pick, and a 2023 second rounder for Rasmus Ristolainen. Again, we can't see much. I think we've talked about it. Buffalo, a fantastic job. Looking at Philly now, we all knew. See, when Fletcher was hired, I think we all kind of had this idea. Okay, where are the nuts trades? Okay, where are they? And all of a sudden, here it is. They wanted to rework their defense. All of a sudden, it projects as Ryan Ellis and Ivan Provorov, Rasmus Ristolainen and Travis Sanheim, and then Justin Braun, and they slot Cam York in there. If you're curious about the forwards, it's Konechny, Couturier, Giroux, Farabee, Hayes, Atkinson. That's not bad. And Abe Kubel, Lawton, Van Riemsdyk, Lindbaum, Frost, and Wade Allison. Okay, hot take. I kind of love this. Super hot take. Philly are winning the Metro next year.
Okay, well, yes, fine. Like that's, I don't see how you trade 14th overall and a second round pick for Rasmus Ristolainen. If you like the player, listen. Rasmus Ristolainen could succeed in Philadelphia next year. I hope he does too, because he's been playing in utter crap for the last I don't know how many years.
Entire career.
It literally his entire career. But how, like, what was the market on Rasmus Ristolainen where you as Chuck Fletcher said, sure, I'm going to pay our pick this year and then a second 2 years down the line for a guy who just both sides of the aisle, analytics and eye tests, are now kind of getting fed up with this guy. Like, that's the price is the concern for me. I can imagine in Philadelphia with the caliber of players they have, they can just kind of keep this guy in the shadows and he won't be a big deal. But not when you pay that price.
Apparently, Kevin Adams.
Apparently, teams who had first were in.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Because yeah, it's what Kevin Adams said on, like, I think in an article for NHL.com. They were like, can you compare like the Reinhart, Ristolainen returns? And apparently, like, the market was a lot more for Ristolainen, that they had to outbid teams. Like, the Philly had to outbid teams to get him at that price.
It was that there was a thing with the first rounder that teams in the 20s were asking, but it had to be higher, which is masterful work by Kevin Adams.
100%.
Right-handed defensemen, man, they are at a premium. There is another right-handed defenseman who's a UFA that is linked to a Canadian market, and I'm terrified to see what the contract is. Quite honestly, with you. Though I love Philly. I love them for all the wrong. It is kind of bad where it's like, so we couldn't defend, so we brought in Rasmus Ristolainen. Apparently a big thing with Philly, this is also from 31 Thoughts, that a look inside their sort of mind here is they feel like they had some quit last year. And apparently Ristolainen has a really good reputation for being like a guy who really freaking cares. Now, that kind of sounds silly that, oh my God, an athlete cares, excuse the motorcycle. But like in the NHL, you'd be surprised watching some games when guys give up. So apparently Ristolainen is a great teammate. Again, I'm rooting for him so badly because just everyone dog piles on him for his play. But again, that is a defenseman who can put up like 40 points like nothing. He can be a real meanie. I don't know why I said me, but you know what I mean? You're a real tough SOB. I was really hoping again a Canadian team I will not name would get him, but that's not going to happen. So I think he can really help like a power play in that. Like I just really like Rasmus Ristolainen, and it just seems like a great guy. Finland, who doesn't love that country?
He's only 26, and
God, he feels like he's been around since forever.
Yeah, I know. And
26.
Yeah, he's only 26, and same draft as McKinnon.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, yeah, he's a baby too, McKinnon. Wow.
So we'll see how it happens, because like I know a lot of people are kind of saying, that was a home run thing for you to get Ryan Ellis, but then it's like, oh, you follow up with Rasmus Ristolainen, but again, it's like maybe change environment, And when you said that he's one player that really does care a lot, I'm like, man, to be in Buffalo for that long and have that mentality and that stride.
Yeah. And you know what? How about we put it like this? I don't think they really gave up anything to get up to lose Ryan Ellis. Like, no offense, what was Nolan Patrick's value? So maybe in my eyes, I like I did with Buffalo, I balance it out. Okay, I'm on Philly's team here. I haven't always been on Philly's team before, but yeah. All right, so here's the main event. We'll talk about some quick signings afterwards, but okay. I love the Canucks as well. Oh. So they pull out a deal. I remember seeing the notification for this trade and thinking, "Oh my goodness, this cannot be happening." The Canucks have finally acquired Oliver Ekman-Larsson. By the way, he is 12% retained on his salary. And they also receive RFA Connor Garland.
Good player.
Which is all right, okay. You know what, Arizona, it's kind of weird. Now, the issue kind of comes with the Coyotes in return get the 9th overall pick. That was pretty all right. A 2022 second, a 2023 7th, and they trade the contracts, each with a year left, and they all had trade protection, by the way, which is hilarious that Benning pulled this off. Antoine Roussel, Louis Eriksson, and Jay Beagle. First off, the Coyotes are going to be awful next year. Now, in essence, I'm going to read you a Frank Saravelli tweet. Great guy. Canucks essentially traded one more year of paying $12 million in cap hit between Eriksson, Roussel, and Beagle in exchange for a better team next season with Garland and OEL, but potential long-term cap hit consequence with OEL at $8.25 million until 2027. Again, 50% of that is retained. And, oh, wait a minute, they need to also re-sign Connor Garland. And at the same time, Quentin Hughes. And at the same time, Elias Pettersson. And by the way, OEL is declining and is one of the highest paid defensemen in the league. What do you know? Isn't that just the theme of the episode?
I don't know what they're going to do. Like, I'm just genuinely concerned for the Vancouver Canucks. They want to trade Nate Schmidt, who has 4 years left at 5.95. I'm sure a team would be willing to take him, but I don't know what you're possibly getting in return for that. They have Adam and I had this discussion before you hopped on, Daniel. They have $21 million in cap space, have to re-sign Jason Dickinson, who they just also acquired, Connor Garland, Elias Pettersson, and Quinn Hughes. So, and they're going to go short term. We already know this team can't afford long term for Hughes and Pettersson. How? Like, I just feel like we're kicking the issue down the line.
Yeah, it's baffling to me now when you look at that defense where, OAL might also bounce back as well. Sure. Because he probably hated Arizona. Yeah. That they're going to be better next year, but again, like I'm just looking at Tyler Myers and OEL getting that cap hit, like both of them together, and it's really crazy to me.
The question is, when will OEL be traded back to Arizona when his contract looks horrible?
Well, to be fair, Alex, he does have a no move clause, so he is blocking it. Shoot. It's hilarious that by the way, he opted to come to Canada. By the way, the cap hit for OEL now is 7.26. The other defensemen they have under contract: Myers, Jack Rathbone, and again the guy who it looks like they're going to trade because it's not working out, Nate Schmidt. Also, kind of interesting that both Connor Garland and Jason Dickinson are arbitration eligible. Which is not great. Now, I think we should try and be positive about the Canucks here. You guys know I'm a fan of Oliver Ekman-Larsson.
Yeah.
And even at that cap hit, and he's not as good as he used to be, he's probably their second best defenseman. Yeah. I love the fact they got Connor Garland. I'm super jealous they have that. That's a good player that the Canucks fans... I hate to kind of say this because this guy had some injury problems of his own, but it's kind of like a younger version in my eyes and maybe probably more skilled of Michael Furlan. Who, God, I wish that guy, like health wise, you wish him the best. And not to mention, like, they're going to get some sort of cap relief in some way with Jake Buchanan being bought out today. It's a $50,000 cap hit. Next year will be $500,000. Maybe they're not done. Like, people have been interested in Holtby, but for what the Canucks need to do, because they have to win. That is, the Canucks have to win next year, or else Benning will be gone. So in what they are trying to do, their
You can't even say with a straight face. You can't even say with a straight face.
Their goal of becoming a better and improving their team, I think they've done an excellent job. I'm now concerned that they're going to trade Brock Besser because the salary could get really messy there, and it just seems to be. And teams were calling about Besser. They weren't shopping him, but there were reports that he was getting some interest. So I'm worried, but at the same time, to an extent, I think the Canucks they're not gonna win the Pacific because Vegas. I think they're gonna make a divisional spot, and I'm trying to say I like the move, but like I can't really get it out by looking you guys in the eyes through the camera of my mouth. But I'm trying, Vancouver. And I've had a very rough relationship with the Vancouver Canucks on this podcast. But I'm going to give Benning the credit here. He did something creative. He did.
Sure, yeah.
I give him a B-.
He did something that he said he didn't want to do, which was have to trade picks to receive cap space relief. And then he used that cap space relief to bring in 7.25 Oliver Ekman-Larsson. So this is the reason I'm not entirely sure what on earth they're doing. The rumor that was going around is that they wanted $15 million allocated towards Pettersson and Hughes. So in that theory, they would be left with $6 million to then sign Connor Garland and Jason Dickinson and then fill out the rest of their roster. Like that's where the concern is for me, is how are you, like, I believe that Jim Benning wants to win. I believe that's every GM wants to win. How are you going to win with no depth? I, a Maple Leafs fan who watched that, just said the team, there's no depth. Like, I'm telling you that you kind of need depth.
And then if they do trade Holtby, they're probably going to have to retain, but then you need to get a replacement for him. You're also probably, like, if you trade Schmidt, then there's room to get a defenseman there. But then, and this guy's not going to cost you a lot, but there's only Levy. Like, you'll to your point, you'll fill bodies there, but it's just the quality there. It's just going to be, it's not going to be great.
I know this is a high standard, but because not every team is Tampa Bay. But when you look at Tampa Bay's third line of Gourde, Coleman, and Gaudreau, I don't see that here. I don't see anything close to resembling that type of third line as Vancouver's third line.
It's way too top heavy. I think that they're going to expect Pettersson, Besser, or even Horvat to have like those breakout years where they could still try to hold on to those, like, the anchor, the offense. But again, like, it's just Vancouver. They just seem gutted in a way. And when I look at their, that's really Paul Colson. Maybe he'll surprise us.
Yep.
But again, like, he's going to be a guy that has to play in the top six. And now again, like, I look at those bottom pairings, and it's just funny because like it's like another cycle of things where you look at like a Jay Beagle or you look like an Anton Roussel. These guys you want to play in the bottom pairings, but like, really, are you going to overpay other guys again to plug in there?
You're going to have to. Vancouver. They're going to, remember Benny said they're going to be aggressive in free agency too. So there's a move coming. It's going to be.
I bet everyone was so happy to hear that in Vancouver.
All right, we'll rapid fire through the last 3 points we got here. First off, RFA Pavel Buchnevich, up for arbitration, is traded to St. Louis. This is a very strange one for the Rangers. For Sammy Blais and a 2022 second from the St. Louis Blues. I think that's, like, even whatever he gets paid. I really like that deal for St. Louis, and I just don't understand what the Rangers are doing anymore. Because I don't that 6-year deal with Barclay Goodrow, and I'm thinking, man, in a short-term deal, I feel like you could have done that with Booch and move away from skill and looking more towards the will, I guess.
Also, wouldn't he be a good piece to include in a Jack Eichel trade?
No, because they don't want to give anything up apparently.
Okay, cool. So yeah, no, awesome. I don't really understand this deal either. It's a tad confusing. From a Rangers perspective, I think it's a good move for St. Louis. I guess bringing a new face to a team that had a rough year, and I'll bring it up again. I guess Daniel is right; they didn't make the playoffs. But we'll see.
With the Rangers, like their side of it, it just maybe they just didn't want to pay Buchnevich, which is totally understandable. But again, I think it's that weird thing with the Rangers when you Alex, you talked about Artemi Panarin coming into this young team, like suddenly with all those high draft picks they have a bunch of wingers that they have to put somewhere. Like I don't think Vitaly Kretsev is gonna play in the bottom 6, or Capo Caco, he's gonna want to try to have a bounce back year. So that's the only mentality I kind of see there, where it's like they want these cost control kind of guys who have the high potential to potentially fill in that top 6. But I don't know, it's underwhelming return, to be honest, for a guy that I really thought that he stuck around when the Rangers were still figuring out things.
By the way, I'll tell you, Capo Caco doesn't need a bounce back year. He just needs a good year.
Yeah.
That guy. Next, Taylor Hall has re-signed in Boston, $6 million AAV, which I'm pretty sure he was making before. It's a 4-year deal. That's $24 million total. And I hate when the Bruins sign a good deal, and it seems to happen every other day.
They almost got us there, the media. They said, oh, Taylor Hall in Boston, not going to happen. And guess what? It happened. I like this deal. I think even if they don't bring David Krejci back and we're still unsure about what on earth they're going to do there, I think what it does is you can plug in a Charlie Coyle. Hopefully he can fit into that role. And it didn't work great the first time, but second time, hopefully it works. And it gives that center finally 2 proper wingers that they've been looking for years.
There's also another center that may come back from Sweden to help plug him in there.
Is it Jacob Forsbacka Karlsson?
Yes, it is.
I mean, listen, I hope, but it's a tough one to. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so.
A quick shout out to Penny Alexiak.
Oh yes,
silver medal. I was trying to make a joke because it's such a shame that in the hockey world everyone takes like really makes fun of Jamie Alexiak, and he had such a good year. Like it's this great sort of money, like really defines his role, like the marquee pick in the expansion draft, and then like a week later his little sister gets a silver medal for Canada, and you're like, man, I was gonna put in the doc because the joke was always Penny's brother. I was gonna put Jamie's sister, but it just wasn't as funny.
It didn't work the same way.
It just doesn't. Yeah. And he seems like such a good guy too.
Yeah, I'm happy for him. I've mentioned it before where when he was picked 14th overall in 2011 and then he just didn't really have it. I guess at the beginning, everyone was like he was a bust. Like his ceiling was, bottom pairing 7th defenseman kind of. Like, the game's kind of past these type of big guys. And then he's really transformed himself like the second go around for Dallas to actually become like an anchor kind of guy where we mentioned Jake Muzzin again, where, it's a gritty guy that got better with his skating and he really adapted to what he can be for the NHL.
Mm-hmm. Finally here, a great sort of contract for the Colorado Avalanche because they needed more of those. Cale Makar, the second best defenseman technically this year in Norris candidates. He'll probably win the Norris one day. Great young defenseman. Best skater in the league probably. McDavid's the fastest. Makar, though, my lord, he's good. It is a 6-year deal, $54 million. It's a $9 million AAV. Apparently they wanted to try and keep him around the range of Mikko Rantanen. It would have gone towards $10 million if it was an 8-year deal, but I am sickened by how good a deal this is. And he is like, honestly, I was going to be surprised if he was less than 10 for this deal. The fact that both him and Heiskanen are under 9.5 is Mwah. And Hughes must be so mad seeing Vancouver with no cap space because he's just missing out on a payday right now.
And because he's all right, because correct me if I'm wrong, but Hughes is ineligible for an offer sheet.
This is true.
Which if he was eligible, I would have said New Jersey, pick up the damn phone and make a damn deal, because that will be awesome.
They joked about that with him in the interview because he's with his brother, and they're like, "And you're gonna play," and he just kind of laughed about it.
And he's like, "Yep, probably, because I can't stand it."
I hope so.
No, I think this deal is incredible for the Colorado Avalanche. I mean, obviously, Cale Makar is getting paid, and that will take him, if I can do math correctly, to about 28 years old. So you're going through the kind of his prime, but that contract will end kind of towards that big peak, and then he'll get paid again.
Yeah.
Hopefully the cap will be moving, but I don't know. Who knows anymore? But just overall, like, just making sure he's there was priority number one for that team.
It just, again, it's great that he took a team friendly contract, that he has that team mentality going for him, and it's just unfair. Colorado, like Sam Girard, Devon Taves, Cale Makar, and then they didn't even play Bowen Byram that much, and like that guy is gonna shine.
Right.
Sure. Okay, that is everything, gentlemen.
Chicago. You wanted to talk about Stan Bowman. I just
remember
now.
Yeah. Listen, if you're in the scenario that the Blackhawks are under right now, especially when some of the plaintiff accounts are coming out of the Aldridge situation, I just think it was, and the fact that the Habs had made their pick right before Chicago, and you go from the ESPN panel being floored about it, and then it cuts to Bowman, and he has just the group of people he had with him, like strong women, like you hate to like disparage them, but it just seemed like such a PR stunt, and the Blackhawks just look like terrible with it. I don't know how not Bettman. How mad was Bettman after the last two picks of the first round? I wonder. Like, just like the fact that Bowman and the rest of that group thought that was a good idea, just made if the Habs hadn't done what they did, the Blackhawks would be being ripped apart right now. Because it was just it's so obvious what you're doing that it's almost kind of sad, and it's not fair to the women you brought on, because it's just they're just sort of caught up in it, and I don't like it from the Blackhawks. I don't. I really don't. I don't feel bad that you just gave Seth Jones one of the worst deals in the National Hockey League. I just don't like what they're doing.
Yeah, it feels like an absolute PR stunt, and I feel like they knew exactly what they were. I feel like they knew exactly what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
It was weird. Like, yeah, it was just kind of like these things come out and it's like, we have a blockbuster to announce. And I don't know. It just kind of feels, again, like intangibles already, like the details of what he gave up. It just kind of felt like, and this is all speculation, that the higher ups were like, by any means necessary, you should do a trade like this because he did get fleeced.
All right, well, that's everything for the show today. Thank you to Voicette, as always, being a fantastic platform for the show. Check out my YouTube channel. Check out Daniel's stuff for CJRU and Hockey Riders and all that. Alex's blog, all that shenanigans. Check out the show social everywhere, including YouTube, all the TikTok, Facebook. Why not? And all that kind of fun stuff. Our personal social medias as well. Check out the show wherever you listen to your podcast, because if not, then how are you listening to this? If you're on the podcast app, give us a rating. 5 stars. That would be pretty sweet. Write a review. What do you think of the draft? It's pretty fun, right? And that's it. Goodbye.